You think you can shame me in my own house?" The iron hissed in Segun's hand, steam rising from the pressing board like anger made visible. His eyes were wild, bloodshot from too much drink and too little sleep. Yetunde stood frozen in the doorway of their bedroom, her 6-month belly pressing against her nightgown, her phone still clutched in her trembling hand. "Segun, please," she started, but his voice cut through hers like a machete through sugarcane. "Please what? Please let you continue disrespecting me? Please let you laugh with your ex-boyfriend on the phone while I'm breaking my back to feed you? It was my cousin Femi. I showed you the messages. Lies! All lies!" He lunged forward, and Yetunde's scream pierced the night air of their Asokoro estate apartment. The iron came down, not on the ironing board, not on clothes, but on her belly, on the life she carried, on everything she thought was sacred. The smell of burning flesh mixed with her screams. Neighbors would later say they heard it 3 compounds away. Welcome to Stories by Tino, where we bring you real African stories of pain, strength, and survival. Thank you so much for your continued support. Before we continue, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Are you in the US, Jamaica, Nigeria, the UK? Let us know. We love hearing from you. Now, back to Yetunde's story. The door burst open. Their neighbor, Mrs. Uche, a grandmother who lived 2 floors down, came running in her wrapper and headscarf, her husband Obinna right behind her. "Jesus Christ! What is happening here?" Yetunde was on the floor, curled into herself, sobbing and gasping. Her nightgown was burned through, the fabric melted into her skin. The smell, God, the smell, made Mrs. Uche gag. "Call ambulance! Call ambulance now!" Obinna shouted, already pulling out his phone. Segun stood there, the iron still in his hand, his face a mixture of shock and rage, as if he couldn't believe what he'd just done, but also couldn't bring himself to regret it. "She provoked me," he whispered. She was laughing with another man, at night, while I'm working to pay for this house. She provoked me." "You animal!" Mrs. Uche screamed, rushing to Yetunde's side. "You burned a pregnant woman, your own wife, your own child!" More neighbors poured in, the compound security man, a younger couple from upstairs, everyone talking at once, shouting, crying, praying. Someone yanked the iron from Segun's hand and unplugged it. Someone else grabbed him by the collar and shoved him against the wall. "If that baby dies, you will rot in hell," Obinna said, his voice low and deadly. Yetunde could barely hear them. The pain was everywhere, searing, white-hot, unbearable. She felt wetness between her legs and knew, with a mother's terrible instinct, that something was horribly wrong. "My baby," she whispered through tears. "Please, my baby." The ambulance took 25 minutes to arrive. In Abuja traffic, even emergencies crawled. By the time they loaded Yetunde onto the stretcher, she was unconscious, her body shutting down from shock and pain. Mrs. Uche climbed into the ambulance with her, holding her hand, praying in Igbo under her breath. Segun tried to follow, but Obinna blocked him. "You stay here," Obinna said. "You've done enough. She's my wife! You just tried to kill her!" The ambulance doors slammed shut, and the siren wailed into the night. At the National Hospital, doctors rushed Yetunde into emergency care. Her vitals were weak. The burn was deep, 3rd degree, covering a hand-sized area of her lower abdomen. But worse, much worse, the baby's heartbeat was fading. "We need to operate now," the head doctor said, her voice tight with urgency. "The trauma has triggered premature labor. The baby is in distress." Mrs. Uche, still in her night wrapper, signed the consent forms because Yetunde couldn't, because her husband, the man who should have been there, was the reason she was dying. The operation took 2 hours. The baby, a boy, was born silent. He never took a breath. Yetunde woke up 3 days later. The first thing she felt was pain, dull, throbbing, everywhere. The second thing she felt was emptiness. Her hand moved instinctively to her belly, and she knew before anyone said a word. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." A nurse, a young woman with kind eyes and a tired face, sat beside her bed. "I'm so sorry, sister. We did everything we could." Yetunde's scream was silent. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out, just tears. Endless, heavy tears that soaked the pillow, the sheets, her hospital gown. "Where is he?" she finally asked, her voice raw. "Your husband?" "No." Yetunde's eyes were empty, hollow. "My son. Where is my son?" The nurse hesitated. He's been prepared. We were waiting for you to wake up before we made arrangements." Yetunde closed her eyes. "I want to see him." "Sister, I don't think... I want to see him." They brought him wrapped in a white cloth, so small he looked like a doll. Yetunde held him, this tiny, perfect boy who would never cry, never laugh, never call her mama. She held him and rocked him and whispered apologies into his unhearing ears. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you," she sobbed. "I'm sorry, my baby. I'm so sorry." Mrs. Uche stood in the corner, crying quietly. Other women from the compound had come, strangers who became sisters in tragedy. They prayed, they wept, they held Yetunde when her body gave out from grief. But Segun never came. When they finally removed the bandages, Yetunde saw it. The burn scar, angry and red, shaped almost like the iron itself. A permanent mark, a brand. The doctor, a woman in her 50s with silver streaks in her hair, sat down beside her. "It will fade," she said gently. "With time and treatment, it will fade. But it will never fully disappear." Yetunde stared at it in the mirror they gave her. She touched it carefully, wincing. "Good," she whispered. The doctor frowned. "Good? Let it stay." Yetunde's voice was cold now, distant. "Let me remember. Let me never forget what he did, what he took from me." She looked up at her reflection, at this woman with hollow eyes and a scarred belly and empty arms. "He took everything from me," she said quietly. "But I'm still alive." That night, alone in her hospital bed, Yetunde made a decision. She would not die here. She would not break here. She would survive. And Segun, the man who burned her, who killed their son, who walked away without even a word, would learn that some fires don't destroy. Some fires forge steel. What would you do if you were in Yetunde's position? Would you forgive? Would you fight back? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe no woman deserves this pain, hit that like button and subscribe to Stories by Tino for more powerful African stories. Turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. The funeral was small, too small for a child who deserved the world. Just Yetunde, Mrs. Uche, a handful of neighbor women who barely knew her, and a young pastor who stumbled through generic words about God's mysterious ways and heaven gaining an angel. Yetunde stood at the graveside in a black dress Mrs. Uche had bought for her, staring at the tiny white coffin being lowered into red earth. She didn't cry. She had no tears left. Her body was a hollow shell, her heart a burned-out room. Segun didn't come. His mother did. Mama Segun arrived just as the first shovel of dirt hit the coffin, dressed in expensive lace and gold jewelry, her face twisted not with grief, but with anger. "This is your fault," she hissed at Yetunde across the grave. "You pushed my son too far. You provoked him with your wayward behavior." Yetunde looked up slowly, her eyes dead and flat. "Your son killed my baby. You killed that baby by disrespecting your husband, by making him so angry he lost control. What kind of wife—" Mrs. Uche stepped between them like a shield. "Mama, this is not the place. This is a child's burial. Have some respect." "Respect?" Mama Sagun's voice rose, shrill and sharp. "My son is hiding like a criminal because of this girl's lies. The whole estate is talking. Our family name is ruined." "Your son burned her," Mrs. Uche said quietly, dangerously. "With an iron, while she was pregnant. There are witnesses. There is a police report. There are hospital records. What lies are you talking about?" Mama Sagan's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Then she pointed a trembling finger at Yetunde. "You will not destroy my son. You will drop those charges. You will tell everyone it was an accident, or I will make sure you suffer more than you already have." Yetunde said nothing. She just turned back to the grave and watched them bury her son. 3 days after the funeral, Yetunde returned to the apartment in Asokoro. Mrs. Uche had offered to come with her, but Yetunde said no. This was something she needed to face alone. The door was unlocked. Someone had been there. Inside, the apartment had been stripped, not robbed. Stripped deliberately. The TV was gone. The refrigerator was gone. The bed, the couch, the dining table, all gone. Even her clothes, her boxes of fabric and sewing supplies she'd been collecting to start a small business, her photo albums, her certificates from the secretarial school she'd graduated from before marriage. Everything. All that remained was the ironing board, standing in the middle of the empty bedroom like a monument to destruction. And on it, a note in Sagun's handwriting. "You wanted to ruin me. Now you have nothing. The rent is paid until the end of the month. After that, you're on your own. Don't look for me." Yetunde stood in the empty apartment, her footsteps echoing on bare floors, and laughed. It was a broken, hollow sound that scared even her. "Nothing," she whispered to the empty walls. "He thinks I have nothing." She touched her abdomen, feeling the ridges of the healing scar beneath her dress. "I'm still breathing. That's not nothing." Her own family came the next day, not to comfort her, to scold her. Her uncle, her father's younger brother, who'd always acted like he was doing her a favor by acknowledging her existence, sat in the empty living room on the floor because there were no chairs, looking at her like she was a disappointment. "Yetunde, you need to withdraw the police case," he said without preamble. She blinked. "What?" "The case you filed against Sagun. Drop it." Her aunt, a thin woman with a perpetually sour face, nodded vigorously. "It's causing too much talk in the family. People are saying things. Your cousins are being asked questions at church. It's shameful." "Shameful?" Yetunde's voice was barely a whisper. "He burned me. He killed my baby. And you want me to drop the case because people are talking?" "These things happen in marriage," her uncle said, waving his hand dismissively. "Every couple fights. But you don't go telling the whole world about it. You don't put your husband in trouble with police. It's not our culture." "He tried to kill me." "He lost his temper. Men lose their temper. That's why women need to be wise, need to know when to keep quiet, when to— Get out!" Her uncle's eyes widened. "What did you say to me?" Yetunde stood up, her body shaking but her voice steady. "I said get out of my house, both of you, now." "You ungrateful— Get out! Get out! Get out!" She screamed it until her throat was raw, until they scrambled to their feet and rushed out the door, muttering about disrespect and madness and what happens when you educate girls too much. When they were gone, Yetunde collapsed against the wall and slid to the floor. Alone. Completely alone. The knock came 2 days later. Yetunde opened the door to find a hospital administrator, a man in a tired suit with tired eyes, holding a folder. "Mrs. Sagun?" She almost corrected him, almost said, "I'm not Mrs. Anything anymore." But instead, she just nodded. "I'm from National Hospital. Your bill is outstanding. We've been calling the number on file, but no one answers." "How much?" Her voice was flat. He opened the folder. 278,000 naira. The world tilted. That was 6 months of the salary she used to make before Sagun convinced her to quit her job and focus on being a good wife. I don't have that." We understand this is difficult, but the hospital has policies. We need at least half payment within 30 days, or we'll have to— Or what? You'll dig up my dead baby? Take back the surgery that saved my life? What exactly will you do? The man flinched. Ma, I'm just doing my job. Yetunde closed her eyes. I'll find it. I'll find the money. Just give me time. When he left, she stood in the doorway of her empty apartment and thought about all the ways a person could disappear. How easy it would be to just stop. Stop fighting. Stop trying. Stop breathing. Then she thought about Segun, somewhere out there, probably laughing with his mother about how he'd destroyed her. And something inside her, something hard and burning and alive, said no. Mrs. Uche found her 3 days later, sitting on the floor of the empty apartment, staring at nothing. Yetunde, you can't stay here. I have nowhere else to go. You have me. Mrs. Uche's voice was firm. Pack whatever you have left. You're coming to Kubwa. You'll stay with me and Obina until you get back on your feet. I can't burden you. Burden? Mrs. Uche laughed, but there was no humor in it. Child, you think I haven't been where you are? You think I don't know what it's like when the world turns its back? I was married to a man who beat me for 7 years before I found the courage to leave. My own family called me a disgrace, called me a failure, but I survived, and you will too. She pulled Yetunde to her feet, looked her straight in the eyes. You are not what he did to you. You are not this scar. You are not this pain. You are Yetunde, and you are still here. That means something. Yetunde's lip trembled. I don't know how to start over. Nobody does, but you start anyway. 1 day, 1 hour, 1 breath at a time. That night, Yetunde packed her few remaining belongings into 2 small bags, a handful of clothes that had been in the laundry, her ID cards, the hospital discharge papers, the death certificate of a baby whose name she'd whispered once before they took him away. Tomiwa. My joy. She stood in the bedroom one last time, looking at the ironing board Segun had left behind like a cruel joke. Then she picked it up, carried it to the balcony, and pushed it over the edge. It clattered 6 floors down into the compound, breaking apart on impact. She watched it fall and felt something shift inside her. You wanted to break me, she whispered into the night air, but I'm still standing. Kubwa was different from Asokoro. Where Asokoro was polished and wealthy and cold, Kubwa was crowded and loud and alive to families spilling out of small apartments, children playing football in dusty streets, women frying akara by the roadside, music blaring from every direction. Mrs. Uche's apartment was tiny, a 2-bedroom flat she shared with her husband Obina and their adult son, who was away at university. They gave Yetunde the son's room, a small space with a single bed, a wooden wardrobe, and a window that looked out onto a courtyard where neighbors hung their washing. It's not much, Mrs. Uche said apologetically. It's everything, Yetunde whispered, sitting on the bed and touching the clean sheets. Thank you. That night, she lay in that small bed in that small room and cried for the first time since the hospital. Not tears of despair, tears of relief. She was alive. She was safe. And tomorrow somehow, she would figure out what came next. But tonight, she slept. She woke to voices in the courtyard below, women talking, laughing, arguing about whose turn it was to sweep the common area. Normal things, life things. Yetunde looked down at her hands. They were shaking, but they were hers. She touched her face, still hers. She pressed her palm against the scar on her belly, still hers. You will not be the end of me, Segun, she said to her reflection in the small mirror on the wall. Her voice was stronger now, harder. You burned my skin. You killed my baby. You took my home. But you didn't take me. She straightened her shoulders. And that was your biggest mistake. Have you ever had to start over from nothing? Have you ever been blamed for someone else's cruelty? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your story might help another woman know she's not alone. If this chapter touched you, hit that like button and subscribe to Stories by Tino. We're just getting started. The first morning in Kubwa, Yetunde woke to the sound of life. Children shouting, mothers yelling, a rooster crowing somewhere close by. The sizzle of oil in a frying pan, gospel music blasting from a neighbor's radio, car horns, motorcycle engines, the call of street vendors selling bread and akamu. It was loud, chaotic, overwhelming, and for the first time in weeks, Yetunde felt something close to peace. She sat up slowly, wincing as her scar pulled tight. The room was small, but clean. Sunlight poured through the thin curtains, warm and golden. On the bedside table, Mrs. Uche had left a cup of water and a plate covered with a cloth, fried plantain and bread. Yetunde ate slowly, tasting nothing but grateful for the gesture. When she emerged from the room, Mrs. Uche was in the tiny kitchen, humming while she washed dishes. "Good morning, my dear. You slept well?" "Yes, Ma, thank you. Don't call me Ma. Call me Mama Uche. Everyone does." She dried her hands and studied Yetunde with kind, assessing eyes. "You look better. Still tired, but better." "I feel different," Yetunde admitted. "I don't know how to explain it." "You feel alive," Mama Uche said simply. "That's what happens when you stop waiting to die and start deciding to live. Now come, I want to take you somewhere." They walked through Kubwa's crowded streets, weaving between Okada riders and market women balancing basins of tomatoes on their heads. The neighborhood was a symphony of movement and noise, so different from the quiet, sterile elegance of Asokoro. Mama Uche stopped in front of a small shop with a hand-painted sign. "Blessings Fashion House. We sew with love." Inside, 3 sewing machines hummed steadily. Fabrics of every color hung on the walls. A plump woman in her 40s, her hair wrapped in bright ankara, looked up from her machine and broke into a wide smile. "Mama Uche, you came." "Blessing, this is Yetunde, the one I told you about." Blessing's smile softened into something more gentle, more knowing. "Welcome, sister. Mama Uche says you know how to sew." Yetunde nodded. "I learned in secondary school, and I was saving up to start my own small business before—" Her voice trailed off. "Before life happened," Blessing finished for her. "I understand. Life has a way of burning down our plans, doesn't it?" She gestured around the shop. "This place? I built it from nothing. My husband left me with 3 children and no money. I had 1 sewing machine and a dream. Now look." Yetunde looked. Really looked. At the neatly organized fabrics, the satisfied customer picking up a finished dress, the 2 young apprentices bent over their work, focused and learning. "If you want," Blessing continued, "you can help out here. I can't pay much, maybe $20,000 a month to start, but it's something, and you'll be learning, building skills, keeping your hands busy. Idle hands feed dark thoughts." 20,000 naira. It was nothing compared to what Yetunde used to make. It wouldn't even touch the hospital bill, but it was something. It was a beginning. "Yes," Yetunde said, her voice stronger than she expected. "Yes, I'll help." Blessing's smile could have lit up Lagos. "Then welcome to Blessings. We start tomorrow at 7 a.m. Don't be late." Word traveled fast in Kubwa. By the end of the first week, everyone knew Yetunde's story, or thought they did. The versions multiplied like whispers in the market. She's the one whose husband beat her. No, he burned her with an iron. I heard she was cheating. That's why he did it. She lost a baby, poor thing. Her own family disowned her. She's staying with Mama Uche. You know, Mama Uche takes in every stray. Yetunde heard the whispers, felt the stares, saw the way some women pulled their children closer when she passed, as if bad luck was contagious. One afternoon at the shop, a customer, a woman with a sour face and too much perfume, looked Yetunde up and down and sniffed. "So you're the one who couldn't keep her husband happy." The shop went silent. The sewing machine stopped. Yetunde looked up from the hem she was stitching. "Excuse me? I'm just saying, When a man goes that far, there must be a reason. What did you do to make him so angry?" Blessing stood up, her face thunderous. "Sister, collect your fabric and leave my shop." "What? I'm just—" "Now! I don't serve people who blame women for men's violence. Get out!" The woman huffed and gathered her things, muttering about these modern women with no respect. When she was gone, Blessing turned to Yetunde. "Don't listen to people like that. They speak from ignorance and fear. They're afraid if they admit what happened to you could happen to them, so they convince themselves you deserved it. You didn't." Yetunde nodded, but the words still stung, still burrowed under her skin like thorns. That night, lying in her small bed, she stared at the ceiling and thought about all the ways the world tried to make victims responsible for their own pain. Mama Uche gave her a notebook one evening, a simple exercise book with blue lines. "Write," she said. "Write everything you're feeling, everything you remember, everything you want to say but can't. The paper will hold it for you until you're strong enough to hold it yourself." At first, Yetunde didn't know what to write. The blank pages felt like an accusation, like proof that her life had become a story she didn't know how to tell. But then she started. Day 1. My name is Yetunde. I am 28 years old. I am a widow to a marriage that died long before my baby did. I have a scar on my belly where my son used to grow. I don't know who I am anymore, but I know I'm still breathing. That has to count for something. Day 4. A woman at the market asked me what I did to make my husband so angry. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to show her my scar and ask if this looks like something I deserved, but I just walked away. Mama Uchi says that's strength too, knowing when to fight and when to save your energy. Day 9. I'm learning to sew again. My hands remember even when my mind forgets. There's something healing about taking broken pieces of fabric and stitching them into something whole. Maybe that's what I'm doing with myself. Day 15. I saw a pregnant woman today and felt nothing. Not jealousy, not anger, not even sadness, just empty. I wonder if that emptiness is healing or just another kind of death. The diary became her companion, her confessor. The one place she could be completely honest about the rage and grief and confusion swirling inside her. 3 weeks into working at Blessings, a woman came into the shop carrying a basket of fresh puff-puff. She was older, maybe 60, with gray hair cut short and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. She wore a simple dress and moved with the quiet confidence of someone who'd survived storms and come out dry. "Blessing," she called out. "I brought snacks for your girls." "Mama and Kechi, you didn't have to." When have I ever listened to have to? She distributed the puff-puff with generous hands, and when she got to Yetunde, she paused. "You're the new one, the one staying with Mama Uche." Yetunde nodded, suddenly self-conscious. Mama Nkechi smiled. "I own the buka 2 streets down. Mama Uche told me about you. If you ever want to learn cooking, real Nigerian cooking, the kind that fills the belly and the soul, you come see me. I can always use help, and I pay fairly." I don't know how to cook much," Yetunde admitted. "Good. Then you won't have bad habits to unlearn." Mama Nkechi's laugh was warm and full. Life has a funny way of teaching us what we need to know, exactly when we need to know it. You'll see. After she left, Blessing leaned over. That woman? Her husband died and left her with 7 children and nothing but debt. She started that restaurant with money she borrowed from a women's savings group. Now she feeds half of Kubwa. If she's offering to teach you, take it. She doesn't offer lightly. Yetunde thought about it all day. By evening, she'd made her decision. She would learn to sew. She would learn to cook. She would learn to survive. And someday soon, she would learn to thrive. It happened without warning. Yetunde was at Mama Nkechi's buka the following week, learning how to fry akara properly, the right temperature of oil, the right consistency of bean paste, the right flip of the wrist. A little girl, maybe 5 years old, came running in. "Mama Nkechi, Mama Nkechi, my mama says she wants 5 wraps of akara and 100 naira moi moi." Okay, small madam. Tell your mama I said hello." The little girl started to run out, then stopped and stared at Yetunde with wide, curious eyes. "Auntie, why is your face sad?" "Kioma," Mama Nkechi scolded. "That's not polite." But Yetunde knelt down to the child's level. "My face is sad because I've been through some hard things, but I'm getting better." "My daddy died," Kioma said matter-of-factly. "Mama cried a lot, but then she said we have to keep living because that's what Daddy would want. Are you keeping living too?" Something cracked open in Yetunde's chest. "Yes," she whispered. "I'm keeping living too." Kioma smiled, a gap-toothed, innocent, purely joyful smile, and then ran off, her task forgotten in the way of children. Yetunde stood up slowly and caught her reflection in the buka's small mirror, and she smiled. It was small, tentative, fragile as new skin over a wound, but it was there. "There she is," Mama Nkechi said softly, watching her. "There's the woman who's going to make it." That night, Yetunde added to her diary. Day 28. I smiled today. I didn't think I'd ever smile again. But a little girl asked me if I was keeping living. And something inside me answered yes before I could think about it. Maybe that's what healing is. Your body deciding to live even when your mind isn't sure yet. Segun wanted to bury me in shame and pain. He wanted me to disappear. But I'm still here. And every day I wake up, every day I work, every day I learn something new. That's my revenge. Not fire. Not violence. Just life. Just refusing to die. She closed the diary and looked out the window at Kubwa's nighttime chaos, the lights, the noise, the endless, stubborn, beautiful life. "If they buried me in shame," she whispered to herself, "I'll rise in purpose." Have you ever had to rebuild yourself from nothing? Have you ever found strength in the smallest moments? Comment below and share your story. It might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this chapter moved you, hit that like button and subscribe to Stories by Tino. Let's keep Yetunde's journey going. 3 months passed like pages turning in a book Yetunde was writing herself. She woke early, worked at Blessing's shop until noon, then walked 2 streets over to help Mama Nkechi at the buka until evening. Her hands were always busy, stitching, stirring, serving. Her mind, for the first time in months, was quiet. Not peaceful, not healed, but quiet enough to think, quiet enough to plan. The money came slowly, 20,000 from Blessing, 15,000 from Mama Nkechi. She saved every naira she could, eating little, spending nothing on herself. The hospital bill loomed over her like a storm cloud, but she chipped away at it, payment by payment. "You're working yourself to death," Mama Uche said one evening, watching Yetunde collapse onto the couch, too tired to even eat. "I'm working myself to life," Yetunde corrected softly. "There's a difference." Kubwa had become home. The noise that once overwhelmed her now felt like a heartbeat, steady, alive, real. The neighbors who'd whispered about her at first now greeted her warmly. The children who'd stared now ran up to her asking for stories while she worked. She was becoming part of the fabric of this place. And then Segun came back. The return. She heard about it before she saw him. "Yetunde," Blessing called out one afternoon, her face tight with concern. That man. He's in the area. People saw him asking questions about you." Yetunde's hands stilled over the dress she was hemming. "Where?" "At the junction. He's with some men. They don't look friendly. Maybe you should stay inside today." But Yetunde stood up slowly, setting aside her work with deliberate care. "No, I won't hide. Not anymore." She walked out of the shop and toward the junction, her heart pounding but her step steady. And there he was. Segun looked different, thinner. His clothes were wrinkled and cheap. nothing like the designer shirts he used to wear. His eyes were bloodshot and wild, darting around like a cornered animal. He was talking to a group of men, gesturing angrily, his voice carrying across the street. "Ungrateful woman destroyed my life. Went to police, put my name in the mud, turned my own family against me. And now she's here, living free while I suffer." Yetundi stopped about 10 meters away, and someone in the crowd noticed her. "That's her. That's the woman." Segun spun around and their eyes met. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Segun's face twisted into something ugly, rage mixed with desperation. You witch! You're the reason I lost everything." "I'm the reason?" Yetunde's voice was calm, but it cut through the noise like a blade. "I'm the reason you pressed a hot iron on your pregnant wife?" The crowd that had been gathering went silent. Segun stumbled forward. "You provoked me! You were talking to other men! You disrespected me!" "I was talking to my cousin. You killed our baby because you were drunk and jealous and violent. Those are your choices, Segun, not mine." "Liar!" He lunged toward her, but the men around him grabbed his arms, holding him back. "Olga, calm down." "Let me go. That woman ruined me. Ruined me." More people emerged from shops and homes, drawn by the commotion. Mama Uche appeared at Yetunde's side, breathless from running. Blessing was right behind her. An older man, one of the community elders, stepped forward. "What is this noise? What is happening here?" "This woman," Segun spat, pointing at Yetunde with a shaking finger. "She went to police. She filed false charges. She turned my family against me. I lost my job, my house, my respect, all because of her lies." "Lies?" The elder looked at Yetunde. "Is this true, my daughter?" Yetunde lifted her chin. "The only truth is this. He burned me with an iron while I was 6 months pregnant. Our baby died. I have hospital records. I have witnesses. I have this." She lifted her blouse. The crowd gasped. The scar was still there, angry, raised, impossible to deny, shaped like an iron, branded into her flesh. "I didn't lie," Yetunde said quietly. "I survived." The community's judgment. The silence that followed was deafening. Then a woman's voice cut through, sharp and fierce. "You did this to her? To a pregnant woman?" "You're an animal," another voice added. "Get out of this community. We don't want your kind here." Segun looked around wildly, realizing too late that the crowd was turning against him. But she was disrespecting me. A man has rights. A man has no right to burn his wife," the elder thundered. "What kind of demon possessed you to do such a thing?" "She killed my son, too," Segun shouted desperately. "That baby was mine. She killed him by making me angry." Yetunde's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed steady. "I carried that baby. I loved that baby. And you killed him when you burned me. The doctors have it in their report. Trauma from the burn caused premature labor. You murdered your own son, Segun. Not me. You." A woman in the crowd started crying. Others joined in, tears of rage and solidarity and shared pain. Maman and Keiichi pushed through the crowd, her face set like stone. "I know this story. I've seen it too many times. Men who break their wives and then blame them for being broken. You want to know what happens to men like you? You become exactly what you are now, broke, desperate, alone. Because the world may be slow, but it always balances itself." "I have nothing!" Segun screamed. "No job, no money. My family won't talk to me. My friends abandoned me, and she—" He pointed at Yetunde with pure hatred. "She's here, working, living, smiling. It's not fair." "Fair?" Yetunde's voice rose for the first time, sharp with years of suppressed rage. "You want to talk about fair? You burned me. You killed my baby. You took everything I owned and left me with hospital bills I'm still paying. You wanted me to die of shame and pain. But I didn't. I survived. And yes, Segun, I'm living. I'm working. And sometimes, despite everything you did, I smile. That's not unfair. That's justice. The crowd erupted in agreement, women ululating, men nodding. Someone started clapping, and it spread like fire. Segun stood there, surrounded by condemnation, and for the first time, Yetunde saw what he'd become. Small, powerless, pathetic. The elder spoke again. "Young man, you need to leave this area, now. If you come back and disturb this woman again, we will take actions that the police will find very interesting. Do you understand?" Segun's mouth worked soundlessly. Then he spat on the ground near Yetunde's feet, a final act of impotent rage, and turned to leave. But before he could take 3 steps, a young man blocked his path. "You spit near her feet?" The young man's voice was dangerously quiet. "Apologize." "I don't... apologize!" The crowd closed in, not threatening violence, but making it clear. There was no escape until justice was served. Segun looked at Yetunde, and in his eyes she saw something she'd never seen before. Fear. "I'm sorry," he mumbled. "Louder," Mama Uche demanded. "I'm sorry." "Good," the elder said. "Now leave, and don't come back." Segun practically ran, stumbling over his own feet, followed by the jeers and insults of a community that had chosen its side. The aftermath. When he was gone, the crowd surrounded Yetunde, not with pity, but with respect. "You're so strong, sister." "I wish I had your courage." "My own husband hits me. You've shown me I don't have to accept it." "Thank you for speaking up." Yetunde stood there, overwhelmed by the sudden outpouring of support, and realized something profound. She hadn't just stood up for herself. She'd stood up for every woman in that crowd who'd been told to accept abuse, to stay silent, to blame themselves. Mama Nkechi hugged her fiercely. "You did good, child. You did so good." That night, the women of Kubwa organized an impromptu gathering at Mama Nkechi's buka. They brought food, drinks, stories. They sat in a circle, and one by one, women shared their own stories of husbands who hit, brothers who stole, fathers who abandoned, systems that failed them. And Yetunde listened, really listened, and realized she wasn't alone, had never been alone. "We need to do something," a young woman named Bisi said passionately. "We can't just let these things keep happening." "Like what?" another woman asked. "A women's meeting," Mama Uche suggested. "Every week, where we talk, where we support each other, where we plan, where we refuse to be silent anymore." The women looked at each other, and something electric passed between them. "Yes," Blessing said. "Yes, let's do it." They looked at Yetunde. "Will you speak? At the first meeting? Tell your full story?" Yetunde's first instinct was to say no, to hide, to protect herself. But then she thought about Kioma, the little girl who'd asked if she was keeping living. She thought about all the women in this room who'd suffered in silence. She thought about her son, Tamiwa, who never got to take a breath. "Yes," she said. "I'll speak." The speech. 2 weeks later, the community hall in Kubwa was packed. Women filled every seat. Some brought their daughters. A few brave men came too, sitting in the back, listening. Yetunde stood at the front, her hands shaking, her voice trembling at first. "My name is Yetunde," she began. 6 months ago, my husband pressed a hot iron on my pregnant belly. Our baby died. I almost died. And for a long time, I wished I had died. The room was silent except for the sound of women breathing, listening. People told me it was my fault, that I provoked him, that I should have been a better wife, that I should drop the police case and forgive him to save my family's honor. She paused, her voice growing stronger. But the only honor that matters is the honor I have for myself. And I refuse to honor a man who tried to kill me. Women began to nod. Some wiped tears. I'm not standing here because I'm special. I'm standing here because I survived. And if you're listening to this, and you're in pain, and you think you're alone, you're not. We see you, we believe you, and we will fight with you." She lifted her blouse again, showing the scar to the room full of women. "This is what shame looks like when you refuse to carry it. This is what happens when you choose life over death. This is my scar, but it's also my crown, because I'm still here. And so are you." The applause started slowly, then built into a roar. Women stood, shouted, cried, embraced each other, and Yetunde, who'd been broken and burned and left for dead, stood tall and let herself be seen. In the back of the room, unseen by most, Segun's cousin had attended. She took out her phone and called him. "Segun," she said quietly, "you need to know. That woman you tried to destroy, she's becoming a hero." On the other end of the line, Segun said nothing, but his hands were shaking. Should forgiveness mean going back? Should speaking out be considered revenge? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear from you. If this chapter inspired you, hit that like button and subscribe to Stories by Tino. We're building something powerful here. The women's meetings became legendary in Kubwa. Every Thursday evening, the community hall filled with women, young and old, married and single, mothers and daughters. They came to share their stories, to cry, to laugh, to plan. They came to remember they weren't alone. Yetunde became the unofficial face of the movement, though she never sought the position. Women approached her in the market, at the buka, outside the tailoring shop. They whispered their secrets, asked for advice, begged her to speak to their daughters, their sisters, their friends. "You made me believe I could leave," one woman told her, tears streaming down her face. "I've been planning, saving money in secret. Soon I'll be free." "You showed me I don't have to accept it," another said. "When my husband raised his hand last week, I told him, 'You can hit me. But I will report you. I will tell everyone, and they will believe me because of Yetunde.' He hasn't touched me since." The stories piled up like bricks, building something solid and permanent. A foundation, a future. But with visibility came danger. The threats begin. The first threat came as a note, slipped under Mama Uche's door one morning. Yetunde found it when she woke up, a crumpled piece of paper with words scrawled in angry handwriting. "Stop poisoning women's minds against their husbands. You're destroying families. If you continue, you will regret it. This is your only warning." No signature, no name, just threat dripping from every word. Mama Uche wanted to go to the police. Yetunde refused. "It's just words," she said, though her hands trembled as she threw the note away. Empty threats from cowards. But the threats didn't stop. Anonymous phone calls, harsh whispers in the market. Men she didn't know staring at her with open hostility as she walked to work. One evening, someone threw a stone through the window of Blessing's shop while Yetunde was inside. It missed her by inches, shattering glass everywhere. "That's it," Blessing said, her face pale with fear. "Maybe you should stop the meetings, just for a while, until things calm down." "If I stop," Yetunde said quietly, picking glass out of her hair, "they win. And I'm done letting men like that win." Segun's descent. While Yetunde rose, Segun fell. Word in Kubwa traveled fast, and the story of his public humiliation spread like wildfire. No one would hire him. No one would rent to him. His mother, humiliated by the scandal, stopped answering his calls. He moved from place to place, staying with distant relatives who barely tolerated him, sleeping in cheap hotels when he could scrape together the money, sometimes spending nights in bars until they closed. He started drinking heavily, palm wine at first, then something stronger, anything to drown the voice in his head that kept saying, "You did this to yourself." His friends, the ones who used to laugh at his jokes and slap his back and call him chairman, avoided him now. When he showed up at their hangouts, they made excuses and left quickly. "You're bad luck, Segun," one former friend told him bluntly. "Everyone knows what you did. Nobody wants to be associated with that." "She lied!" Segun shouted. but even he was starting to doubt his own words. At night, when he was drunk enough to be honest with himself, he saw Yetunde's face. Not as she was now, strong, dignified, speaking to crowds, but as she'd been that night, screaming, burning, begging him to stop. He saw his son, the baby he'd never met, never held. And for brief, terrible moments, he felt something that might have been guilt. But then the anger would return, hot and familiar, and he'd blame her again, blame the world, blame everyone but himself. The new girlfriend. Desperate for connection, Segun latched on to the first woman who showed him attention. Her name was Hawa, a young woman, maybe 23, who worked at a bar in a rough part of town. She was pretty in a hard way, with eyes that had seen too much too soon. "You look like you need company," she'd said one night when Segun was drowning his third bottle. He'd told her his sob story, leaving out the parts that made him look bad, painting himself as the victim of a vindictive wife and an unjust system. Hawa listened, poured his drinks, and eventually took him home. For a few weeks, Segun felt like himself again. He had a woman. He had somewhere to sleep. He had someone who believed his version of events. But Hawa wasn't Yetunde. She didn't cook the way Yetunde had, didn't clean the way Yetunde had, didn't defer to him or make him feel important or stroke his ego the way he needed. And when he drank, which was often, he got mean. "You're useless," he'd slur at her. "Not even half the woman my wife was." "Ex-wife," Hawa would correct coldly. "The one you burned. Don't talk about things you don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly. You're a pathetic drunk who blames everyone else for his problems, and I'm done." The public humiliation. The final break came on a Friday night. Segun, drunk and belligerent, showed up at the bar where Hawa worked and started making a scene. "That's my woman," he shouted, pointing at Hawa. "She belongs to me." Hawa, serving customers, didn't even look at him. "Security, please remove this man." "Hawa, I'm talking to you." She finally turned, her face carved from ice. "You don't talk to me. You don't come to my workplace. And you definitely don't call me your woman. We're done. I told you that 3 days ago when you slapped me." The bar went silent. Segun's face turned red. You can't embarrass me like this. Not in public. I'm a man. I deserve respect." Hawa laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Respect? You? The man who burned his pregnant wife? The man who drinks himself stupid every night? The man who hits women because he's too weak to fix his own life?" She stepped closer, her voice dropping but somehow carrying to every corner of the room. "You're not a man, Segun. You're a warning. You're what happens when ego meets emptiness." The crowd in the bar started laughing, mocking, taking out their phones to record. "Everyone knows what you did," Hawa continued, relentless. "Everyone knows you killed your own baby, and now you're here, drunk and broke and pathetic, trying to claim ownership of me?" She spat at his feet. "I'd rather die alone than be owned by something like you." Security dragged him out while the bar erupted in applause. Segun stood outside in the street, chest heaving, tears and sweat and rage mixing on his face. And for the first time in his life, he felt truly powerless. The breaking point. That night, Segun stumbled through the dark streets of Lagos, bottle in hand, talking to himself. He ended up at a church, one of those small, dusty ones with a rusty gate and peeling paint. He climbed over the gate and sat on the steps, staring up at the cross illuminated by a single bulb. "It's not fair," he whispered. "I made one mistake, one moment of anger, and my whole life is destroyed." But even as he said it, he heard Yetunde's voice from that day in Kubwa. "You burned me. You killed my baby. You took everything." One mistake, one moment. But what a moment. What a choice. He thought about all the times he could have stopped, could have put the iron down, could have walked away, could have listened when she screamed. He thought about his son, who never got to breathe because of that one moment, and for the first time, truly the first time, Segun broke, not with anger, with grief. He sobbed on those church steps, alone in the dark, mourning everything he'd destroyed, including himself. The crawl back. 3 days later, word reached Yetunde. Segun was asking for her. He was living in a shack in a slum area, surviving on handouts and odd jobs. He'd sent messages through mutual acquaintances, desperate, rambling messages begging to see her. "Just once," the message said. "Please, I need to talk to you. I need to say something." Mama Uche shook her head firmly. "Don't go. It's a trap. Men like that don't change." But Yetunde surprised herself. "I want to go." "Why?" "Because—" Yetunde paused, searching for the words. "Because I need to see what became of him. I need to look at him one more time and confirm that he no longer has power over me." Blessing insisted on coming along. So did Mama Nkechi, and Obina, Mama Uche's husband, who refused to let Yetunde go anywhere near Segun without a man present. They found him in a one-room shack that smelled of sweat and regret. Segun looked up when they entered, and Yetunde almost didn't recognize him. He'd aged 10 years in 6 months. His eyes were sunken. His clothes hung off his frame. His hands shook. "Yetunde," he whispered, and started to cry. Not angry tears, broken tears. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I destroyed everything. I destroyed us. I destroyed our son. I destroyed you." "You didn't destroy me," Yetunde interrupted quietly. "You tried. But you failed." Segun fell to his knees. "Forgive me, please. I know I don't deserve it, but please, forgive me." Yetunde looked down at this man who had once been her husband, this man who had branded her, this man who had killed their baby, and she felt nothing. No rage, no love, no hate, no pity, just emptiness where he used to live in her heart. "I forgive you," she said finally. Segun's face lit up with desperate hope. Then can we—" "But I will never come back to you." The hope died. "Forgiving you doesn't mean trusting you," Yetunde continued. "It doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean giving you another chance to hurt me. It means I'm releasing the anger so it doesn't poison me. But you?" She shook her head. "You will live with what you did for the rest of your life. That's your burden." "Not mine." She turned to leave. "Yetunde, wait." She didn't wait. She walked out of that shack, out of that slum, out of that chapter of her life, and she didn't look back. Behind her, Segun collapsed, weeping into his hands, and the world moved on without him. Would you forgive someone who hurt you this deeply? Does forgiveness mean reconciliation? Share your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear from you. If this chapter moved you, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for Stories by Tino. We're almost at the end of Yetunde's journey. 2 years later. The sun rose over Kubwa the way it always did, golden, hopeful, relentless. Yetunde stood at the window of her own apartment, small but hers, paid for with money she'd earned with her own hands, and watched the neighborhood wake up. Children running to school, women heading to market, men opening their shops, the beautiful chaos of life continuing. She touched her abdomen absently, feeling the scar through her blouse. It was still there, always would be, but it no longer burned. It no longer hurt. It was just part of her story now, not the whole story, just a chapter. "Mama, Mama, look what I drew." Yetunde turned to see her daughter, her adopted daughter, running toward her with a piece of paper flapping in her small hand. Her name was Zainab. She was 4 years old, with bright eyes and a gap-toothed smile that could melt the hardest heart. Yetunde had found her at a local clinic 18 months ago, abandoned, malnourished, scared. The nurses said no one had come for her. No family. No one. Yetunde had held that tiny, trembling girl and seen herself, seen survival, seen second chances. "Can I take her?" she'd asked the nurse. "You want to adopt?" "I want to give her what I was given, a chance to live." The process had taken months. Paperwork, interviews, home visits. But eventually, Zainab became hers. Not by blood, but by choice, by love. "What did you draw, baby?" Yetunde asked, kneeling down. "It's you!" Zainab held up a crayon drawing of a woman with brown skin and colorful braids. "And this is me! And we're holding hands." "It's beautiful." Yetunde pulled her daughter close, breathing in the smell of shea butter and innocence. "You're so talented. Teacher says I should be an artist when I grow up." "You can be anything you want, Zainab, anything in the world." Fireborn Designs. Yetunde's sewing shop had started small, just her and one machine in a corner of Blessing's shop, but word spread about her work, about the beautiful, carefully crafted garments she made, about the woman who'd survived fire and turned her pain into purpose. Within a year, she'd saved enough to rent her own small space. She called it Fireborn Designs, a name that made some people uncomfortable, but made her feel powerful. "Why Fireborn?" a customer had asked once. "Because fire doesn't always destroy," Yetunde had answered simply. "Sometimes it reveals what you're made of." Now, 2 years later, Fireborn Designs employed 5 women, all survivors of domestic violence, all given a second chance the way Yetunde had been given one. There was Bisi, whose husband had broken her arm twice. There was Ngozi, who'd been married at 15 to a man 3 times her age. There was Ifeoma, whose mother-in-law had poisoned her for not producing male children. Each woman had her story. Each woman had her scars. And each woman was rebuilding. "We're not just making clothes," Yetunde told them during their weekly meetings. "We're making futures. We're stitching hope. Every dress we create is proof that we survived." The shop became more than a business. It became a sanctuary, a symbol. Women came not just to buy dresses, but to hear stories, to ask advice, to remember they weren't alone. The Women's Center. The Thursday meetings had outgrown the community hall. What started as 15 women sharing stories in a cramped room had become a movement. Over 200 women now attended regularly, and they'd had to move to a larger space, a rented building that they'd painted themselves, furnished with donated chairs and tables. They called it the Fireborn Women's Center. Inside, women could get free legal advice from volunteer lawyers, free counseling from trained professionals, job skills training, literacy classes, a safe space to bring their children while they learned and healed. Yetunde had never intended to lead anything. But somehow, she'd become the heart of this movement, not because she was special, but because she'd been willing to speak first, to be vulnerable first, to survive publicly. On this particular Thursday evening, the center was packed. Yetunde stood at the front, watching women file in, young and old, Christian and Muslim, Igbo and Yoruba and Hausa and everything in between, united not by tribe or religion, but by survival. "Welcome, sisters," she began, and the room quieted. "Before we start, I want to share something with you." She held up a newspaper clipping. "This came out last week in the national paper. It's an article about domestic violence in Nigeria, and they quoted our center. They talked about the work we're doing here in Kubwa. They're calling us a model for the whole country." The room erupted in cheers and ululation. "But the article isn't why I'm showing you this," Yetunde continued, her voice cutting through the noise. "What matters is this. 2 years ago, I was lying in a hospital bed, burned and broken, thinking my life was over. And now we're changing the conversation for an entire nation." She paused, letting the weight of that sink in. "So when you think you're too damaged to matter, when you think your story is too painful to tell, when you think you'll never be whole again, remember this moment. Remember that every single one of us in this room is proof that fire doesn't have to be the end. It can be the beginning." The call. That night, as Yetunde was closing up the center, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello?" Silence. Then a familiar voice, weak and rasping. "Yetunde?" Her blood went cold. "Segun? I'm in the hospital, National Hospital. I'm dying." She should have hung up, should have blocked the number. should have protected herself from being pulled back into his orbit, but instead she heard herself say, "What's wrong with you?" "Liver failure. The doctors say maybe a few weeks left, maybe less." He coughed, a wet, painful sound. "I know I have no right to ask, but could you come? Just once? I need to see you." "Why?" "Because you're the only person who ever saw the real me, and I need to die knowing that at least one person in this world knew who I was, even if she hates me." Yetunde closed her eyes. "I don't hate you, Segun. I stopped hating you a long time ago." "Then please, come." She hung up without promising anything. The hospital visit. 3 days later, Yetunde went. Not because she owed him anything, not because she'd forgiven him. She had, but forgiveness didn't mean obligation. She went because she needed to close the door completely, to see the end of his story so she could fully live hers. Mama Uche insisted on coming with her. "You don't face demons alone, child. Not even dying ones." Segun was in a charity ward, the kind where the poorest of the poor went to die. The room smelled of antiseptic and despair. He looked like a skeleton. His skin was yellow from jaundice. His eyes were sunken. The man who'd once been so proud, so violent, so powerful, had been reduced to this, a dying body in a hospital bed, alone except for the nurse who checked on him once every few hours. "Yetunde," he whispered when he saw her. "You came." "I came," she acknowledged. "What did you want to say?" He struggled to sit up, wincing with every movement. "I wanted to tell you. I wanted you to know that I see it now. All of it. What I did, what I destroyed, the monster I became. I already knew that. But I didn't. Not really. Not until I lost everything and had nothing but time to think." Tears rolled down his hollow cheeks. "I killed our son. I almost killed you. And for what? Because I was drunk? Because I was jealous? Because I was angry?" "Yes," Yetunde said simply. "For all those reasons, and none of them. Because you chose violence over love, ego over humanity. That was always your choice. I know, and I've paid for it. God, how I've paid for it." He looked at her with desperate eyes. "But you turned your pain into something beautiful. You're helping people, saving people. You became everything I could never be." "I became myself," Yetunde corrected. "That's all, just myself." Segun reached out a trembling hand. Can I touch your hand?" "Just once? Just to remember what it felt like to be connected to something good?" Yetunde hesitated. Then slowly, carefully, she placed her hand in his. His skin was cold, papery, dying. "Thank you," he whispered, "for surviving, for not letting me kill you, for being proof that there's still good in this world, even when men like me try to destroy it. You're welcome." She pulled her hand back. "Is there anything else?" "Just tell our son's story. Don't let him be forgotten. He deserves to be remembered." "I already do," Yetunde said softly. "Every year on his birthday I plant a tree, 15 trees now, a forest of memory. He's not forgotten, Segun. He never will be." Segun closed his eyes, fresh tears streaming. His name was Tomiwa. Yes, his name was Tomiwa. And he mattered. The funeral, 6 weeks later. Segun died alone in that hospital bed, with no family present and no friends to mourn him. Yetunde paid for a simple burial, not because she owed him, but because even monsters deserved to return to the earth with dignity. Only a handful of people attended: Yetunde, Mama Uche, the pastor, and surprisingly, Segun's mother. Mama Segun looked older, smaller, broken by grief and shame. "Thank you for this," she said quietly to Yetunde. for giving him a decent burial. After everything. It wasn't for him, Yetunde said. It was for me, so I could close this chapter completely. Mama Sagun nodded. I failed him as a mother. I taught him that men don't apologize, that women exist to serve, that pride matters more than love. I created the monster that hurt you. We all make choices, Yetunde said. His choices were his own. But my choices shaped him. The old woman's voice cracked. I'm sorry. I should have said that years ago. I'm so sorry. Yetunde looked at this woman who'd blamed her, threatened her, contributed to her pain, and she said the hardest words she'd ever spoken. I forgive you too. The celebration. 6 months after Sagun's death, the Fireborn Women's Center hosted its biggest event yet, a celebration of survival. Over 500 women attended, survivors, supporters, advocates, government officials who'd finally started paying attention. There was music, dancing, food, testimonies, awards for women who'd transformed their lives. Yetunde stood on the stage, Zainab holding her hand, and looked out at the sea of faces. Women who'd survived rape, battery, abandonment, poverty, injustice. Women who refused to die. 3 years ago, she said into the microphone, a man pressed a hot iron on my pregnant belly. He killed my baby. He tried to kill me. He wanted me erased from the world. The room was silent except for the sound of women breathing. But I'm still here, and so are you. Every single one of you is a testament to the fact that they can burn us, beat us, break us, but they cannot destroy us, not if we refuse to be destroyed. She lifted her blouse, showing the scar she'd once hidden. This is my mark, she said. My brand, my crown. It's proof that I walked through fire and came out the other side, and if I can do it, so can you. The applause started like thunder and didn't stop for 5 full minutes. The ending. Years later, when people told the story of Yetunde, they told it like this. Once there was a woman who was burned by the man who promised to love her. She lost her baby, her home, her dignity, everything. But she didn't die. She rebuilt. She rose. She helped others rise. And when people asked her how she survived, she would smile, that gap-toothed smile she'd learned from her daughter, and say, fire doesn't always destroy. Sometimes it reveals what you're made of. And I'm made of something stronger than iron. On a quiet Sunday morning, Yetunde sat in her small apartment with Zainab curled up beside her, reading a book. Through the window, she could see Kubwa, loud, chaotic, alive. She could see the women walking to market, the children playing, the men opening shops. She could see life continuing. And she was part of it, fully, completely, not as a victim, not as a survivor. Just as Yetunde, a woman, a mother, a business owner, a leader, a human being who'd been broken and chose to heal. She touched her scar one last time, not with shame, not with anger, but with gratitude. Thank you, she whispered to the reflection in the window. Thank you for refusing to die. Thank you for choosing life. Thank you for walking through fire. And in that moment, she was free. Comment, Firewoman, if you believe scars can shine. This is more than just a story. It's a reminder that survival is victory, healing is possible, and your past doesn't define your future. Like, subscribe, and share Stories by Tino. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with every woman who thinks she's broken beyond repair. Share it because stories save lives. Thank you for walking this journey with Yetunde. Her fire might have started with pain, but it ended with purpose. And that's the most powerful revenge of all, refusing to let them win. The end.